Yeah, hello everyone. This is Eugenio from IoT Analytics, and I am currently connected with my colleague Knud, who participated to this SPS IPC Drives conference. Where are you at, Knud? Can you tell us something about it?
Yeah, hi. Well, first of all, it's the SPS IPC is not exactly the easiest name. So this is in Nuremberg in Germany, and this is one of the large industrial automation fairs in the world, I would say. I'm just here in front of hall 5 out of 11 halls, and some of them are actually A and B. So it's pretty big.
Interesting, interesting. So can you give us like a brief overview of what you've seen today?
Yeah, it's all about Industry 4.0. Every single booth, Industry 4.0. When you go a little bit deeper, it's, well, the answers vary. I didn't have a lot of time, so I went on a journey from hardware to software that I want to share with you. So first, I talked to a sensor manufacturer. In that case, I talked to ST Microelectronics, one of the large sensor manufacturers there are. And I basically found out the kind of things that they are sort of innovating around Industry 4.0 right now. The first thing we discussed was around the IO-Link technology, which is basically the standard for sensors to communicate to whatever is above the sensor in the pyramid. And that standard is by now is sort of established. IO has a community that is big enough, and it basically allows over-the-air updates, over-the-air firmware updates of sensors. So this is something that the industry and the sensor industry has gone through in the last years, and that is sort of, if you want, this is the new standard. So you can now, and the example is when there's a sensor in a factory and the sensor doesn't work anymore, the whole factory doesn't have to shut down to replace the sensor. You can actually do a lot of this over the air by just I don't know the English word for that, but working on the parameters basically. The other things they work on right now is about computation. So it's all about more compute power in the sensor. And so they are actually bringing out their own microcontrollers for the first time now. And the other thing is that they are connecting everything through real-time Ethernet. So real-time, the sort of critical real-time element is the other thing that they work on that hardware level. And then the fourth thing that is important on that low-level hardware for them from a chip point of view is security. And what is changing there is that the hardware security, there's a second chip or a second kind of secure chip now being implanted next to the sensor that allows for a much better control of who is accessing the data, encrypting the data, making sure that you can't even disassemble the chip and find out how it's built or what information it holds.
Oh, that's very interesting. Very interesting also because the industrial automation world has always been, put in security as a secondary kind of feature. So it's good to hear that they are starting to think about it as one of the main things that they need to provide.
I think it's pretty innovative. On that journey, I want to take you to the next level, because then I talked to a company that makes PLCs and gateways. I talked to Festo, and they basically they showed something where they worked together with Siemens, with the Siemens MindSphere platform, in a setup for condition monitoring, perhaps later on predictive maintenance, where they have one of their own, well, I guess it's a pressure kind of sensing module, and they're doing some kind of condition monitoring of the air that is flowing through there. And the new thing for them is the gateway that goes on top of the PLC. So the sensor is, there's what the module, so to say, it's not new. The PLC, which then gets that data, is also not new. But the gateway on top of that sends it to the Siemens cloud, that's the stuff that is, for them, is really new. And then obviously that integration with a cloud like Siemens. And I asked the guy, for example, why Siemens? And he said, well, pretty clear, because we believe Siemens is going to stay. It's going to be one of those platforms that's here to stay because it's so big and so important.
So the concept of company stability also comes into play in this case.
Sorry, which company?
The concept of company stability, having like, a company that, can provide, a high life expectancy for their products. They're going to be there and not go anywhere.
I guess so. Yeah, I would say so. There's also one very interesting thing he said, which I want to put in here as well, and that's about the skill gap of software engineers. Like, I asked him, he says he has 5 open positions right now for software engineers in the industrial space that he can't fill. I particularly asked him, what is it? So he said it's front end, it's back end, it's the new kind of web technologies, and he particularly called out, look it up actually, I called out things like HTML5 and Angular and other things. He said it's so difficult to find people to work in the industrial setting with that kind of software skill. So which I thought was a very good example of when we talk about the war for talent in this space. Let me continue on that journey. So now we're going a little bit up the stack. I talked to a platform. In that case, I talked to the Adamus platform, which is a new kind of platform which is a very interesting construct because it's part of it is software AG or Cumulosity, which we know from our IoT platform coverage. But actually, those guys have taken part of that technology and are developing together with the industry in a joint venture their own platform. So they are teaming up. This platform is specifically only for machinery and industrial components, industrial machinery. So they have partners such as Dur or Zeiss, DMG Mori, who basically in a joint venture, everyone has an equal stake in a joint venture, and they together develop applications for the industrial internet. I think it's very innovative. It's very different to the traditional IoT platform approach that we have seen so far, and that it's a very promising, I would say. I can share a few insights from the discussions. I mean, for one thing, for example, I asked is about who has data ownership rights. I think that's a question that we always get. They were very clear on it. They say, look, we sort of made that example. We say, okay, there is Adamus, which is the platform. There's Dur, which is one of the companies that uses the platform. And then there's perhaps BMW as the customer of that platform. And they say, well, if the BMW produces data on a Dur machine, and then it gets sent to the Adamus cloud, it's very clear the data. There's an agreement that says BMW owns the data. Dur is not allowed to see that data unless BMW explicitly shares it with them in order that Dur can develop something that they can share with their competitors, name, let's say, Tesla, but only if BMW wants so. That's a very clear sort of setup, and I think it's good to have that clarity.
Oh yeah, because we have heard from our interviews in the past that many people are actually uncertain about this data governance policies, and that's what sometimes stops them from adopting specific cloud environments. So it's good to hear that they're also working on that.
Absolutely, and then I want to go further in the journey. So now we've had hardware, sort of middle hardware, if you want, platform. Now I talked to some end users. Not a lot here. It's an industry conference, but I found a company that has a very interesting setup. It's the company called Rital, which is a typical German Mittelstand, family-owned champion. They make industrial cooling devices, and they specifically presented here an industrial cooling device that has some smart or predictive maintenance with it. They were very clear in saying, look, we built this together with Siemens and IBM Watson. I discussed with them, why do you do it? So first of all, again, they are also in a trial period. They have not really sold it to the customers yet. They're still in the process of gathering the right sets of data, but they were very proactive. Interestingly, they said, asked them, why are you doing it? And they said, well, our automotive customers demand it. So it's specifically the automotive customers. Again, we talked about BMW just a minute ago. specifically automotive customers are the one that demand this kind of thing. I thought that was interesting. And then on the choice of why IBM, why Siemens, it became pretty clear that that's sort of a choice based on relationships. These guys have had good relationships with those companies before, which is why they chose them. We've had discussions in the past with other firms who've been a little bit more analytical and sort of coming up with why this, why that, why that. In this case, my understanding was not so much. And to add to that, they also built their own gateway. They basically, I'm not sure if they built everything themselves or it's white labeled, but at the end of the day, they have their own gateway that plugs into their cooling devices, that cools the servers in a factory or whatever. And I guess that's an interesting one. We just heard Festo did their own gateway that they sell on the open market. They did their own gateway for themselves. So that gateway functionality is something a lot of firms are developing.
Yeah, it's...
Last but not least, I don't want to make this too long, but I also want to share, I talked to the smart factory in Kaiserslautern, which is a German setup of a smart factory together with lots of industry partners. Sort of one of those, if you think about smart factory, that's what when you Google it, that's what you'll find. And I asked them a little bit, they have a very interesting setup with modular, smart products, robots, gateways, sending it to the cloud. They have that setup and you can see it all online. So they're very transparent with it. I asked them, what are the things of all the people who visit you, of the end users who visit you, who want to know how to make the factory smart? What do they demand? What do they want? And they say it's 3 things that right now they're demanding. 1, they don't really care about the setup. They want to know how to do analytics with the data, what to do with the data. 2, they are a lot talking about edge in terms of what computation can I do at the edge. It's coming up more and more. And then 3, it's about retrofitting. It's great that you have all this setup for new machines, but what about my old machines? So that's sort of the things that people are really interested in.
Yeah. Well, that's very interesting to hear. And yeah, definitely. Well, this thing about retrofitting and edge, I think the industry have been talking about this for a couple of years now, but I think things have been progressing not as fast as they initially thought. So there's still a lot of things that need to be adjusted.
Yeah. But, retrofitting is not that easy.
yeah. It's been like a historical problem of industry.
So I think that's it for me. This is sort of my report from here. It's smaller, not as crowded, nothing about Industry 4.0. It's kind of exciting to see how this is changing everybody's look at the industry. Everybody wants to be digital and going to be digital. We're slowly getting there. I think the discussions I had really show that we do. And as with all the discussions that we are having for these conferences, it's not going as fast as a lot of people want you to believe, but we're getting there. That will be my final thought here.
Okay, that's very good, Knud. Thank you very much for your precious insights from this conference. And yeah, we are all waiting for you to come back to the office in Hamburg tomorrow.
I will. Thank you very much, Eugenio. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.